So 1 is Caitlin Clark, 2 is Paige Beckers. Paige Beckers has 9% of the vote. She has 9% of the vote. It's a vote now. Who's your favorite in this? Brightest star amongst the top 10. Guard Kate.
When you really step back and look at everything happening around the Indiana Fever, Team USA, and even the broader media landscape surrounding women's basketball, a very clear pattern starts to appear. The conversation is no longer about potential or speculation. It's no longer about debating who might eventually become the face of the sport. At this point, the evidence is everywhere, and it's impossible to ignore. Take a moment and look at how the Indiana Fever are being marketed. Look at how Team USA promotions are being designed. Look at the partnerships forming with television networks and international tournaments. Every major promotional graphic, every banner, every highlight package, and every headline seems to orbit around one name: Caitlin Clark. The shift has been gradual, but over the last year it has accelerated dramatically. When Clark first entered the WNBA, the league was already experiencing growth. But what has happened since then feels different. Ticket sales, television ratings, and social media engagement have all moved in a very specific direction. And when organizations start building entire promotional strategies around a single player, that's usually a sign that the numbers behind the scenes are telling a powerful story. You can see it even in small details that many fans might overlook. Look at the voting polls tied to upcoming international tournaments. Look at the fan engagement numbers attached to Team USA marketing campaigns. The percentages aren't close. Clark isn't just leading in those categories. She's dominating them. And when networks, sponsors, and sports organizations notice that kind of response, they adjust their strategies quickly. Sports marketing has always been driven by attention. The athletes who generate the most attention tend to become the center of promotional campaigns, television deals, and sponsorship opportunities. That's why banners and graphics matter more than people think. They're signals. They show you what the organizations behind the scenes believe will draw the most viewers and generate the most excitement. And right now, the message coming from those graphics is unmistakable. This isn't just about who is playing well or who has the most impressive statistics. It's about who captures the audience's attention on the largest scale. The networks know it. The leagues know it. The sponsors know it. At this point, the conversation has shifted from asking who might move the needle to recognizing who already does. And based on everything we're seeing, from Indiana Fever promotions to Team USA marketing to international tournament coverage, one conclusion keeps surfacing again and again. Caitlin Clark isn't just someone who moves the needle anymore. She's become the needle itself.
Who did they choose? They chose a picture of 16-year-old Caitlin Clark. Everything with FIBA for Team USA has been Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is on the banner. In fairness, like obviously posting clips of Angel Reese playing at AmeriCup, which is mad. It is still mad. I don't understand how USA didn't win that AmeriCup. Like that was a good.
The numbers from the fan voting polls make the situation even more striking. In the San Juan poll asking fans to choose their favorite star participating in the event, several prominent players appeared on the list. Among them was Paige Beckers, one of the most recognizable names in women's basketball and someone widely viewed as a future superstar. But when the results started coming in, the gap between the candidates was impossible to ignore. Beckers received 9% of the vote. 9%. That's not an insignificant number in most polls, but in this context it highlights how dramatically one player dominated the results. Because while Beckers and other talented athletes collected small portions of the vote, Caitlin Clark controlled the overwhelming majority of the attention. Her name appeared at the top of nearly every category connected to fan engagement. The difference wasn't close. It wasn't even competitive. And that's the kind of information that marketing departments study very carefully. Polls like this don't just measure popularity. They provide insight into how fans emotionally connect with athletes. When one player consistently draws the majority of engagement, organizations start designing campaigns around that person. That's exactly what we're seeing with the promotional graphics tied to the event. The designers who created those visuals weren't guessing about which player might attract attention. They were responding to the numbers. Every time they feature Clark prominently, they're reinforcing a cycle that already exists. Fans click on the graphics because they recognize her. Networks promote the events more aggressively because they know viewers will tune in. Over time, that cycle becomes self-reinforcing. One player becomes the center of the narrative not just because of their performance on the court, but because they consistently draw the largest audience. And right now, the polling numbers, the promotional graphics, and the marketing strategies all point to the same conclusion. Caitlin Clark occupies a position in the sport that no other player currently matches in terms of fan engagement.
Who's your favorite star in San Juan? Caitlin Clark. And they have Paige Beckers in this one at least. Maria Conde. It'll be interesting to see if she's going to come over to play for the Valks. Forgot about her. But there's plenty of ones for certain groups. It's Caitlin Clark everywhere and FIBA's posting. That being said, you can see in the voting for who the favourite.
The timing of the upcoming World Cup qualifiers makes the marketing decisions even more interesting. The games are set to begin on March 11th, and as Team USA prepared to promote the event, they faced an important decision. They had a roster filled with established stars, Olympic gold medalists, and veteran players with years of international experience. Any one of those athletes could have been featured as the centerpiece of the promotional campaign. But the organization made a choice that immediately caught people's attention. Instead of highlighting a current game image or a recent action shot from one of the veteran players, the promotional graphic used a photograph of Caitlin Clark that dates back years. It's not a recent image from a professional game. It's not even a modern teen photo. It's a picture of Clark as a teenager. The image shows a younger version of the player who would eventually become one of the most talked about figures in basketball. She's wearing an Indiana Fever uniform in the photo, but the picture itself clearly comes from an earlier stage in her career. That decision might seem like a small design choice at first glance, but marketing decisions like that are rarely accidental. When organizations create promotional material for major international events, every detail is carefully planned. The images they choose are meant to capture attention instantly. Using a teenage image of Clark sends a very specific message. It highlights the narrative arc of her career. It reminds viewers of how long fans have been following her rise. And perhaps most importantly, it reinforces the idea that Clark has been central to the conversation around women's basketball for years. Think about what that means in the context of a global tournament. Team USA could have easily promoted the event using a collage of players or a balanced representation of the roster. Instead, the design centers around one figure. That doesn't happen by accident. Marketing teams study audience behavior obsessively. They analyze engagement numbers, click-through rates, and television ratings. When they repeatedly feature a particular athlete in promotional campaigns, it's because the data tells them that person draws the most attention. So when Team USA chose that specific image for the World Cup qualifier promotion, it revealed something about their priorities. It showed where they believe the audience's focus truly is. And it suggested that when it comes to capturing global attention for women's basketball, Caitlin Clark has become the most powerful marketing asset the sport currently has.
TNT know it as well. Look, if Caitlin Clark, people are wondering why TNT are getting into this when Unrivaled failed, and it's like, that is precisely why TNT are getting into this. TNT, for lack of a better way of describing it, TNT are banking on the WNBA season not happening, or they're probably going to get the rights to the actual World Cup. They're in panic mode because TNT lost the.
And when you put all of these pieces together, the marketing decisions, the polling numbers, the television ratings, and the network investments, you start to see a much bigger picture forming around the future of women's basketball. Because this conversation is no longer just about one tournament or one promotional campaign. It's about how the entire ecosystem of the sport is evolving in real time. Television networks, sponsors, and league executives are all trying to answer the same question: where is the audience going? In sports media, that question determines almost everything. It influences how broadcasting deals are structured, which athletes appear in national commercials, and which games receive primetime coverage. Right now, the answer to that question seems increasingly clear. Whenever Caitlin Clark is involved, the audience follows. The numbers show it consistently. Her games draw higher ratings, her highlights circulate widely across social media platforms, and her presence in promotional materials tends to generate the strongest engagement from fans. This doesn't mean other players aren't talented or important to the sport. Women's basketball is filled with incredible athletes who contribute to the game's growth in different ways. But from a pure media and marketing perspective, Clark has become a central figure in a way that few athletes ever achieve. For networks like TNT, that reality carries major implications. After losing the NBA rights, the network is searching for programming that can rebuild its basketball identity. That search naturally leads executives to analyze which players and leagues have the strongest connection with viewers. If the ratings data continues to show that Clark-driven broadcasts consistently outperform other events, networks will inevitably adjust their strategies around that information. More games involving her team could receive national broadcasts. Promotional campaigns might increasingly revolve around her story and career. This is how sports media cycles develop. When a particular athlete consistently draws the largest audience, organizations begin designing entire schedules and marketing campaigns around that individual. It has happened many times in sports history. From Michael Jordan's era in the NBA to global soccer icons who transformed television deals, the pattern is familiar. Women's basketball may now be entering a similar phase. The sport is expanding rapidly, attracting new fans and larger television audiences than ever before. But with that growth comes a central narrative figure who captures the public's imagination. Right now, that figure appears to be Caitlin Clark. And as networks, leagues, and sponsors continue evaluating where to invest their resources, one reality keeps surfacing again and again. The audience numbers, the engagement statistics, and the marketing strategies all seem to point in the same direction. In the modern sports media landscape, attention is the most valuable currency of all. And at this moment in women's basketball, Caitlin Clark appears to be generating more of that attention than anyone else in the game.
Like, try to get on the Caitlin Clark boom. But at the same time, it didn't work out. I reckon that TNT paid Angel Reese. That would be my guess, is that TNT offered extra money to Angel Reese because their ratings were tanking. And my guess as well is that we see them.
To understand how television networks became involved in this shift, you have to look at what happened with TNT sports programming. For years, TNT was one of the primary broadcasters of NBA games. Their coverage of professional basketball formed a major part of the network's identity. The NBA wasn't just another property on their schedule, it was the centerpiece of their sports programming. But when TNT lost the rights to broadcast NBA games, the consequences were enormous. Losing the NBA meant losing one of the most valuable television properties in sports. It meant losing a large portion of advertising commitments that had been tied to those broadcasts. It meant losing the ability to schedule primetime programming around a reliable source of high ratings. In short, TNT suddenly had a huge gap in its sports lineup. Networks rarely allow that kind of gap to remain empty for long. When they lose a major property, they immediately begin searching for something that can replace at least part of the audience and advertising value. That search led TNT toward women's basketball. But the network didn't simply decide to invest in the sport as a whole. Instead, they focused on a specific project, a new league known as Unrivaled. The idea behind Unrivaled was ambitious. It would create an alternative off-season competition featuring many of the WNBA's biggest names. It would provide players with another platform while also delivering fresh basketball content for television audiences. TNT agreed to broadcast the league, committing significant resources to the project. But the timing of that deal is important. The agreement was finalized during the WNBA Finals in Minnesota, right at the same moment when Unrivaled was aggressively pursuing one particular player: Caitlin Clark. Executives negotiating the television contract were operating under certain assumptions about who might appear in the league's games. And when television networks commit money to a new sports property, those assumptions matter. They influence how much promotion the network plans to provide and what kind of audience they expect to attract. So from the beginning, the Unrivaled project was connected to larger expectations about which players would ultimately participate.